Hello, AAAM. How are you? I'm so excited to have you here today. Today, we're having a conversation with the National Park Service. Every time I look up, Congress is giving Megan's division a bunch of money and she has to get rid of it. So we should probably apply for everything that's there, because if not, then she will have to return it back to Congress, and nobody wants that. So today's conversation, like I said, is with the National Park Services, the grant division. I'm really excited because this is near and dear to my heart. As you guys all know, that I speak about the Still Peg division and just being there for 11 years, and then Megan being my boss. And she was a tremendous boss, but then she had to give me my wings and let me be here with you for AAAM. And it's still a sad thing for me, Megan, but I'm so happy that we still remain in touch, and thank you for allowing us to have all of the conversations with you as you have more and more funding, and allowing me to bother you as much as you do. So next slide. Okay. So as you all know, for those of you who are not familiar with me, my name is Vidette Coleman Robinson, and I am the Executive Director of AAAM. AAAM is a nonprofit member organization that was established to support African and African-American focused museums nationally and internationally. And you guys will be excited to know that we have increased membership because of all of you by 200%. And I am so thankful for all of you being here with us and just believing in the mission and allowing us to be your professional development organization. I'm just bees knees excited to be here with you. And in these trenches, we have a lot going on in the field. So just thank you for tapping into AAAM. And then Camille Vincent. Camille is an HBCU Special Projects Fellow. She is working on her doctorate at Howard. And we're just so excited, as many of you guys know, that she's been with us volunteering and doing some internships throughout the years. And she became a fellow, and we're just really excited to have her in the capacity as fellow, but then also so close to Moreland Spingarn. So anything that I need, I just ask her, look it up. You know, our records are over there. So thank you, Camille, for being amazing. Next slide, please. So you guys know the rules, you know the ropes. Drop your name and your institution in the chat so that we can see who all is here. If you have any questions, please feel free to also drop them in the chat. And as we get closer to the end, when we open up the floor for questions and comments, we will go ahead and read them out loud. And I think everybody's phones are muted, but if they are not, please make sure that your computers and your phones are muted throughout the whole presentation, because as you know, we're recording, but then also, you know, if you guys do so many things like multitasking and, you know, shopping during this time, for those of you who don't just do Instacart, and they are not a sponsor, so I'm just using their name as an example. You know, if you're not using a system where they're dropping your food off, just please keep your phones on mute. And without further ado, I would like to pass it on over to Megan. Megan, thank you so much for being here. I shed a tear when you said yes. I think you might still be on mute. No,
I don't think. Can you all hear me?
Okay, I'm going to put myself on mute and then just give you the floor. But thank you so much for being here with us. I know you have tons of content to get through. If I have questions, like frequently asked questions that members have while you are going through the presentation, do you mind if I interject really quickly to, okay, then take it away.
All right. The slides are not cooperating. There we go. Does everyone see a pig?
It's coming.
Okay. slow for some reason. Well, anyway, thank you for having me. It's great to see former coworkers and see them going on to do these wonderful things. And good to be with y'all today. So unfortunately, it seems to be virtual all the time these days, but hopefully we'll start to see some folks in person soon. My name is Megan Braun. I'm the chief of the State Tribal Local Plans and Grants Division as part of the National Park Service. We are in the Washington, D.C. office, and we're in the Cultural Resources, Science, and Partnerships Directorate. So those are a lot of words. So I appreciate that Vidette's still using the shortened version of Steel Pig. And we do embrace the pig part so that so you know why there's a pig on the screen. So today we're going to talk about the Historic Preservation Fund. And I used to say that money doesn't grow on trees, so we need to be use it carefully. But lately, it seems like it's growing on trees, or at least Congress is growing it for us. So this is actually the most funding we have ever had, and the most number of programs that we have ever had. We actually broke the $150 million threshold, which the program's been authorized at since 1979, but it's never gotten that much money. So this is kind of the first time. So it's a bit monumental, but we're going to talk about what that money can do for all of you and the organizations that you work with. So the HPF, as we call it for short, it comes from offshore oil and gas lease revenue. So the idea being the destruction of one resource or other resources, some of that funding is put back into preserving resources that we have that are historic, as well as our Land and Water Conservation Fund. That's where the money comes from for it too. So it's not tax dollars. It does come from a different place. And it has two major components to it. One is our non-competitive grant program, and then the other is the competitive side. So I just want to touch on the non-competitive side because there is some money there. These are basically block grants that we give out to the states and the tribes every year. We formula to divide up that money and give it to them. So we have 59 state historic preservation offices out there that receive funding. And 10% of the money they get every year has to go to certified local governments. So those are communities that make a commitment to do preservation at the local level and enter into an agreement with the state and the National Park Service. And then the other kind of chunk of that funding, about 16 million this year, goes to our tribal historic preservation offices, of which we now have 208 of those. So quite the growing program. And they don't get not nearly as much funding as states, but they do get enough to usually pay for a staff person in their office to help them take on preservation responsibilities on their tribal lands. So I mentioned the Certified Local Government Program, and I just wanted to give y'all a sense of what that entails. There are now over 2,080 of those communities across the country, and it can vary from counties to cities to boroughs to villages. Anyway, you might be in one, and if so, that means your local government is able to apply for grant funding from your state historic preservation offices. So the best way to find out if you're in one is go to our website, and you can look up by state and see if you're a CLG, as we call it for short. These are not big grants, but they're nice starter grants. So if you need to do a little bit of planning, you might need to do a survey, a National Register nomination, maybe a preservation plan for a building, reuse study, those types of things. These are good starter grants and helps you kind of get used to all that's entailed in dealing with a federal grant application. So I encourage you to take a look at it. They do get this funding every year, so it's a little bit more of a guaranteed kind of funding source. And as the amounts to the states go up, so does the CLG amount. So just a quick sales pitch for the CLG program. One of the other resources we have to look at if you're not quite sure what it is you want to apply for, or maybe you're looking for examples of things, We have over 3,000 products produced by the Historic Preservation Fund in our IRMA system. And you can go in here and search under Historic Preservation Fund, and they're broken into categories. So we have everything from tourism plans, preservation plans, design guidelines, historic structures reports, brochures, walking tours, all kinds of things. So if you're kind of wanting to see, you know, well, I want to do design guidelines, but what does that look like? This would be a great place for you to look. And I always say it's perfectly fine to steal other people's ideas if you give them credit and not reinvent the wheel. So this is a good place to go to. So I just wanted to clue y'all into that. Okay, well, let's talk about the competitive grant programs, because I think that's why you guys are all here today. We have 8 of them now. It's the most we've ever had. I got to have a list in front of me, or I tend to forget 1 or 2, which is not good, including our brand new one for the Centennial, which is the 250th of America's founding. So we're going to go into more detail on each one of these, but I want you to know that Vedette y'all will have the PowerPoint to share out. I updated a few things. You're welcome to share that out. We also have fact sheets on each one of these programs that we can share with Vedette and Camille. So don't think you have to write everything down perfectly. All this information is on our website as well, because there's a lot of details associated with a lot of these programs. So just let us know if you need more help. I also wanted to mention that Carey, who I believe is on here with us, she is our outreach coordinator for our division, and she is around and available to answer your questions, maybe help you figure out which program might be the right fit, give good advice on signing up for federal systems and those types of things. So feel free to shoot us an email, and we can put you in touch with Catherine and get you some help there as well. Okay, well, let's talk about some grant programs. One of the things we've seen since 2014 is a major shift in our competitive grant programs to really focus on underrepresented communities. And this is kind of just a basic layout of where we've been able to target that funding. And that I think has been really exciting for us and for staff, and for the communities that we're able to reach out to. Maybe not the communities we've traditionally helped assist, and telling some really important stories along the way. So this has been real exciting work for us, and I hope you guys will think so too. Our African American Civil Rights Program is continuously growing and changing a little bit. Started out with a real focus on civil rights movement, 50s to 60s, and then has broadened. So it now covers everything from transatlantic slave trade forward to current times. We break this program into 2 sections. One are preservation projects that do physical repair to historic buildings associated with African American civil rights. And you can see here, we did a lot of work to the skylights clerestory at 16th Street Baptist Church in Birmingham. And then we also do history projects. So those are a bit more amorphous, I guess you would say. Those could be everything from doing National Register nominations, doing surveys for African American resources, to exhibits, oral histories. We've done a lot of that, and we've even opened it up to collections. And I think that all of you might be interested in that collections piece. For sure. So we're seeing applications come to us for collections associated with civil rights, often housed in museums, and didn't really have a way to help them. So we did get permission to expand our mission a little bit to that collection side of things. So I hope you all will take notice of that. And with all federal grants, who can apply is kind of an important place to start, right? So sometimes Congress tells us who can and who can't. And each one of our programs, most of them are pretty standard, but a few have a bit of differences, and I'll point those out to you as we go. But for this program, it's states, tribes, local governments, and nonprofit organizations are all eligible to apply. You can see the program's grown quite a bit, and for 2022, we have $22.7 million to give away. Key to this program is no match is required. So you don't have to go out and do a lot of that fundraising. We do like to see that you do have some buy-in, that might be with staff time donated, or maybe equipment or materials donated, those kinds of things. We do look at it as a competitive factor, but it isn't actually required. So you can see the kind of funding amounts on history and preservation. This is one of the updates I just made. Actually, we have increased the amount that you can apply for all of our programs, pretty much, given the increased appropriations and what we're seeing with inflation, construction costs, all those things. We definitely needed to kind of bump those numbers up. So now a history project can go up to $75,000. It was at $50,000. And a preservation project can go up to $750,000. It was at $500,000. So a kind of significant bump of about 33%. Applications for this program, we're going to try to push all of our applications a little earlier than they've been in the past. And those will open this summer. So keep an eye on that. We're hoping for June, but we'll see. We have a lot of forces that kind of decide when and when we can open them, but that is our plan for right now. And I'll just tell quickly a story about Leona Tate, who of course was part of desegregation of the New Orleans schools. I had the opportunity to visit the site, which was a school she went to as a child, and she and her fellow classmates have formed a nonprofit, bought the building, and have turned it into senior housing as well as a community center. And I got to go back to see it in March. It looks amazing. And it's such a great story. And to have been there with her and walked around and seen the site, and she would tell us, I get chills just thinking about it again. But one of the stories she told us was the marshal that escorted her. He felt like this was one of the most important things he'd done in his life, and he asked to have his ashes scattered on the site. So it's these kinds of stories that we're telling through these programs, and they're not always, fun stories. A lot of them have a lot of difficult history, as you all know, but it's important to share them and document them and keep those for future generations. So this has been a very, will be a big moment as we look back on what the Historic Preservation Fund has done with this program, especially. So we have a bit of a spin-off of our African American Civil Rights program, and that's called History of Equal Rights. And so this is open to all Americans and looking at documenting that struggle they have had for equal rights. It's a smaller program. We have a bit less funding available at $4.6 million. That scares me that I'm saying that's less. But again, no match required. But this one does focus on preservation projects. It doesn't do the history piece, though we can do pre-preservation. So that might be developing plans and specs, a preservation plan, feasibility study, something like that to actually help the building go forward. And then maybe you apply for a preservation grant next. Again, like similar range, up to $75,000 for that planning type of work, and then $750,000 for construction. And this is an example of Alice Paul's childhood home. She was a lead in the suffrage movement, author of the Equal Rights Amendment. Sorry, losing my acronyms there. And it's a woman in that cause. So this is her childhood home that we're actually doing work on to help preserve and do some ADA accessibility, which is something we often do fund and pay for, how to do sensitive accessibility to historic buildings, which is not always the easiest thing to do. Our HBCU program, which I think is some proud graduates of my staff and former staff. This is one of our oldest competitive grant programs, actually. It took a little bit of a hiatus from funding, but it's back and funded at $10 million. Jessica Kelly's our lead for this program. You may have worked with her on some things. But this is focused at preserving national listed properties on HBCU campuses, but we've opened that up to include eligible properties as well. So not just listed, And eligible buildings, anytime we fund a grant project and the building is not listed in the National Register yet, we do ask that as part of that grant project, a National Register nomination is prepared. Because it is very important to also expand the National Register to reflect the underrepresented history that we have. And so that's kind of one of the rules of the Historic Preservation Fund anyway. We've also opened this program up to fund preservation plans as well as National Register listings for the sites. So those are eligible as well. And we've bumped that amount up again to $750. There's also no match required for these as well. Then I'd like to call our underrepresented community program the little engine that could. It kind of started everything off in 2014 and with a real focus on that National Register piece that I just talked about, that it doesn't represent, it's supposed to be a planning tool for the federal government of where historic places are and keeping us from impacting them in bad ways. And it really didn't cover a lot of places, a lot of communities. So this program was developed to fund surveys of underrepresented sites and communities, as well as then do nominations to the National Register. And we've kind of made I think a small but significant change in those National Register listings. This program has been well received, and you can see we've bumped up to $1.25 million this year, so that's exciting. We've also bumped these grants up to $75,000 maximum from $50,000. These applications will probably be coming out very soon. We just actually announced the 2021 funding, and there is no match required for these, but I do want you to pay attention to these grants are open to state and tribal historic preservation offices and certified local governments. So if you're not one of those entities, you would need to partner with one of those entities to apply. That's perfectly doable, and it happens quite a bit. A lot of our states have really embraced this program and done a lot of survey and nomination. So keep that in mind, though, as you're looking at this one. And Lindsay Alston in our office is the lead for this program. Our tribal heritage grants is our oldest competitive program. Madeline Kahns in our office is the lead for this. And these, we usually have about $500,000 to $600,000 in awards in funding for this program. And again, no match. But we do, this program is a little bit broader sometimes into preserving those unique tribal cultural traditions and heritage and those types of things, be it basket weaving, food, plant gathering, those types of things, or the example we have here, which is of the Hula Preservation Society that's gotten together every year since 1940 to document through oral histories and different methods, the way that the dance has evolved in Hawaii. So kind of an interesting program. And if you have a tribe, a federally recognized tribe that you're in partnership with or might be working with this will be a great source of funding for them. Vedette remembers State of America's Treasures quite well, I'm sure, and worked with us on a lot of those projects. The program took a little bit of a break, but it is back in full force. And we have funded nationally significant buildings and collections all over the country. This program is a little bit unique in that we work in partnership with the National Endowment of the Arts, the Endowment of Humanities, and the Institute for Museum and Library Services. It's a wonderful partnership. IMLS actually manages the collections projects for us. So again, ding, ding, ding. This one is all about collections on part of it. So the key being that we're looking at preservation and conservation of nationally significant buildings and collections, but that has some parameters to it. On the building side of things, you need to be listed at the national level of significance in the National Register of Historic Places or be a National Historic Landmark. So there are some limitations there. And if you're not sure, the first thing to do is get in touch with your state historic preservation office and find that out. Because if you're not at that national level, unfortunately, you're not eligible to apply on the building side. For the collection side, you just make the case for why your collection is nationally significant in the application. And I've rarely seen a collection turned away. As long as that case is strong and you're showing what your collections are representing and why it's important to the country and its history as a whole, then usually that works. This program also requires match. That's a statutory requirement. So it is a dollar for dollar, non-federal match, but that could be in-kind services, donated services. There are ways to do match besides cash. And you don't necessarily have to have all of that match in place at that time. In the application, you need to show us you have a good plan for raising it. Maybe you've secured some of it. Maybe you have donated staff time and those types of things. And then you're showing us what other foundations you might be applying to or where you're going to go and seek that match. So we don't penalize you for not having it in place, but we definitely want to see that you have a strong plan for raising it. We have $26.5 million this year to give away. So we have bumped the amounts up again on this one. So $750,000 is the maximum for both the buildings and the collections projects. And our hope is to get those out in the fall, probably with like a November deadline around there. So do keep that one in mind. And just an example of one of the collections projects that we worked on is the conservation of Rosa Parks bus. So we do, if you have ships, trains, vehicles, buses, spaceships, we've worked on all of those. And those tend to go through the collection side of things. So if you might have one of those objects not listed in the National Register, you could go the collections path. So just keep that in mind as well. We have a kind of a different program in our Paul Braun Historic Revitalization Grants, and this is meant to be a little bit like our Certified Local Government program. So this funds programs, not projects. In essence, we're looking for a strong entity, a state, a tribe, or a local government or a nonprofit to come into us, get a block grant, and then sub-grant that out to other sites in their area of influence or jurisdiction. We'll have $10 million to award for that in 2022. This is available to state offices, tribal offices, nonprofits, and certified local governments. So partnering, again, might be important. There is no match required for these, and the maximum amount you can apply for in a block grant is $750,000. Usually then we see whoever the applicant is, they get the grant award, and then they run a grant process and get in applications and then award those. And they may be from $10,000 up to $50,000 or $70,000. That's what you tell us in your application is what is that grant program going to look like that you're creating. And one other thing this funding is it has to be spent in rural areas, but we use the definition of the census, which is communities under 50,000 people. So you might decide to apply for these funds and you only want to help communities under 10,000 people. You want to get it much smaller, and that's okay. But as part of that application, you're going to be telling us how you're going to run a grant program and how you're going to award that money and make sure that work gets done. So it's a little bit of a different kind of process. So I do encourage you guys to come to us, and if you have questions on this before you kind of go down the application path. Corey Kegereis is the lead for this program in our office as well. And last but not least is our new one, the Semi-Quin Centennial grants. Our legislation says restore and preserve state-owned sites and structures listed in the National Register of Historic Places that commemorate the founding of the nation. This one's been a little hard for us to get our arms around. What does founding of the nation mean? What are the dates of that? How do we kind of interpret that? We have chosen to interpret it very broadly. So there is no beginning date on this, but we will look at history or sites that are created prior to December 31st, 1800, using the presidential election and the transfer of power peacefully as a moment of, this is kind of when America kept going. So applicants include states, tribes, local governments, and nonprofits, but the other piece of this is this site has to be state owned. So it's a bit of a conundrum to try to explain, but y'all might have something that that works with this, a state-owned site that has connections. I mean, we want it to be broad, to look at, you know, sites that aren't necessarily thought of as, you know, the Mount Vernons of the building of the nation, but the places that people live that help build that nation and that type of thing. So, and the tribes and all the other types of activities that were going on in what is now the United States during that time period. So 10 million for this, no match required. And we do focus on preservation projects for this one. So we're going to be doing that physical preservation. These are actually open right now. So if you're ambitious and want to throw a grant application together before May 3rd, go for it, please go for it. But we do have another 10 million in funding, and those applications will be open again in the winter of 2023. So I just wanted to kind of give you all a little bit of guidance. I'm sure Vedette has heard me give this many times before, and Catherine, I know. But when you're thinking about applying, it's Catherine likes to explain, you know, it's kind of a long process. So start 6 months early. Like, we're warning you about grant deadlines that will happen in November. Now's the time to kind of start thinking about it. So starting early is the key. And even if you just get registered in all the systems, SAM.gov is especially difficult, can take 4 to 6 weeks to get registered in there. We have a new thing. We don't use a DUNS anymore. We have a UEI number. So things are changing. So even if you've kind of done a federal grant before, there may be some things that have shifted since then. Making sure your project is eligible, you know, checking that national significance, making sure is it listed in the National Register or not? What are those things? And then making sure it's the logical next step. So we don't want to see an application come in that we're going to refinish their floors if there's a hole in the roof. So we want to see that you're tracking along, and this is the logical thing. Make sure you're using the current application form. They do get updated every year. And check that math, because sometimes it doesn't quite come out right. And when you're telling your story about your project, you know, we want to know everything about it, but remember that grant reviewers are looking at 70 plus applications. So the more concise you can be, less is more, do that. And use photographs to tell a lot of that story. So we love to see a picture of your beautiful property in a sunny day and it looks great. But if you have a picture of it with rain pouring down through the roof, send that one in too. So good photos are often bad photos. Our deadlines are pretty real. We have had to do some extensions this year to get enough applications. So when I say that we need you to apply, I mean it. But that is the first time we've really done that. We've not done it too often. So do keep in mind that doesn't fluctuate very much. And if you're not funded, please come and get your comments from us. We always tell you how to do that in our response letter to you. Often we have applicants try again. It's important, and we do have a pretty strong memory. So if you apply again and maybe didn't address the comments that you got, we tend to remember these things. So we're magical in that way. And then good grantees often get funded again and again. Several of these programs, we have these that have gotten up to 4 grants for them, but making sure they're progressing on that grant they already have. And doing what they're supposed to, their reporting's in line and those types of things, those are what become important. So you might get a civil rights grant from us and then an SAT grant from us and that kind of thing. So just keep those kinds of things in mind. We have a lot of great videos. Well, I don't know if they're great or not. They're mostly me talking, but video help on our YouTube channel. So please do check that out. And Catherine's got the staff working on some new ones that aren't quite as long and probably a little more exciting to view. But we do have some up there on how to write an application for certain programs and things like that that could be helpful. And then this is just kind of a sense of timelines. It takes a long time for us to work through the award of a federal grant. And often that's because we have so many applications and programs going on. But it really takes us about 120 days at least after the deadline to process that. So we pretty much warn you not to plan to start your projects until 10 months past, or I'm sorry, 6 months past the deadline. And so just kind of be aware of that. We know you're excited. We know you probably need the money, but that's what we're going to be looking at realistically. We also use a new system called Grant Solutions. Well, it's new to us last year. I'm not sure it makes things easier, but if you're not familiar with it, you might want to think about getting an account on it and getting signed up through there, because that's what we'll be using there, as well as ASAP, which is how we push money through. So those are kind of the big systems you'll need to be part of that. And then just being aware that, you know, you're going to have interim reports due every 6 months. You're going to do an easement if it's to a grant to a physical property, those kinds of things. Don't be surprised by what those grant conditions might be. And all that information is in that notice of funding opportunity called the NOFO that we post on grants.gov for you to apply to. Now, I have told you a lot of information. What's the best way to keep up with it all? I mean, we got 8 grant programs going on and all kinds of things. It's to sign up for our bulletin. And here's the address. You can go to it. I think we're kind of the first one. You look under Park Service and we're the first one to sign up for. And this will enable you to get a bulletin email every time we announce a new program, every time we award grants, those types of things. You can kind of check the box on what you're most interested in, so you don't get just harassed by us. But this is probably the easiest way to keep up with what's going on with us. And here's contact information for us, our website, just nps.gov/steelpig. Our email is steelpig@nps.gov, and our phone number. We have multiple staff checking those that email and that voicemail. Camille can attest to this. She helped us do some of that work every day. So that is the fastest way to get a question to us. And if the folks that are answering it right then can't answer it, they will get it to a team member that can. We're also on Facebook, Twitter, and I mentioned YouTube. And I think that is about it that I have. I will turn it back to Ms. Vidette.
Thank you, Megan. We can unshare the screen. I think that there were some questions about, Peter asked, do any of the grants support state recognized tribes, or do they all have to be federally recognized?
For us, they have to be federally recognized, unless they might have some kind of nonprofit arm that could apply as a nonprofit. But for applying under tribes, they do have to be federally recognized, or Native Hawaiian or Alaskan corporation.
Okay. Ginger asked which entity oversees the application process for Save America's Treasures, and can collections consist of other items such as art and documents? I can answer all of these questions, but I'm going to let you go because you're not paying me for that. So I'm not on staff anymore. That's your job.
Let that take over. We actually manage the application process jointly. I was actually just on a call with the endowments this morning. They handle the collection side, we handle the building side, and then we kind of come together to make funding decisions. And yes, art certainly qualifies. That collection side of Save America's Treasures has done everything from conserve the Saturn rocket to record choreography for dance, to fresco conservation in buildings, to even the housing of collections. So if you're looking at, needing a better archival system, digitizing archival records, but yes, we've definitely done a lot of art conservation, that type of thing.
Superb. Does that answer your question, Ginger? My girl, Ginger.
Yeah, I'm still struggling. Yes, thank you so much.
Okay, we got you. No problem. No problem. Megan, I was happy to hear that the African American Civil Rights grants have expanded and they're not just 20th century history. for those of you who know me, when I was with Megan and those grants came through, I said, we got to talk to Congress because civil rights did not start in the 20th century. And she said, well, we can't speak to Congress. You will lose your job. We're not going to do that. But there, our advocates can do so. And it looks like everyone did. I know when I was there, we were focusing on an African-American civil rights grants for oral histories had to identify or should identify spaces or places that could be placed on the National Register. Is that still something that you would like to see in applications, or are you waiving that due to the influx of cash that you have and you kind of got to throw it away as quick as possible?
That's really a good question, but it is still something we want to make a tie to. So, our job for the Preservation Fund is to save places. So if we can, at least even if the site's not there, but document maybe where those events happened as part of those oral histories and get a sense of what might be gone now that we didn't know about, that's still kind of an important piece. We may stretch it a little bit more now, but yeah, helping us know where the stories took place, I guess, is what we'd like to see.
That's perfect. And I noticed that we have a couple of members on that are part of federal agencies. Are you giving funding to federal agencies, or is this something that federal agencies should do as a cooperative agreement through their organization to Park Service? And maybe not HPF, but another entity within Park Service.
It kind of depends on the program. The main one that will fund work for federal agencies is Save America's Treasures. Still, none of our grants for the HPF can go to support Park Service owned sites or collections. So if we can't fund ourselves, basically, is what it boils down to. We do occasionally enter into cooperative agreements, task agreements with nonprofit groups to work on things. I'll give an example. I didn't really mention it, but we have about $100 million in disaster funding right now. And we've been working with the National Main Street Center, as well as the National Alliance of Preservation Commissions, to develop community disaster preparedness training. So those are kind of those special kind of projects that sometimes we can do. So certainly if there's a big idea out there, let me know.
So something like this Smithsonian, when they received, now I know that was a little different because they received an earmark, and earmarks are bye-bye. Those are no longer.
Oh no, they're back.
Oh, they're back? Wow. Well, I guess to some, congratulations to having earmarks back. But that railroad car from Norfolk was an earmark, and it was part of Save America's Treasures. So is that something, look at Renee, thank you for the grant. So stuff like that. Renee, do you want to take your mic off to speak about that, or do you have a question? I'm just surveying the area and thinking of who's going to have a question about some of the stuff. So
I just want to say thank you so much. That was something that kept me up. I was head of collections at that time. I didn't know how we were going to do it. I didn't know how we were going to make it happen. We had to make it happen. We had to do it diligently. We had to do it well. We had to do it fast. We had to get it in the building so we could continue with the construction, because it went into the building and then we built around it. I'm so thankful that the earmarks are back. For those of you that are interested, it's a lot of work, but trust me, it is worth it. And you need to dream and think big, because the conversation was, I'm like, can't we get a piece of that money? Well, what do we have? I don't know. Don't we? Wait, hello? Something big, rail car, rail car. So you need to think big. And they are good at answering questions and shepherding you through the process, but do not be afraid to go for it. I highly recommend it. And when we do those tours and people come through and look at that car, I just think, oh my gosh, because we don't know how we could have had it happen.
funny story, that grant did not start off as my grant, but I closed it. And when the National Museum opened, I went to Megan, I said, they opened, I'm going to see if the sign is there. And because everything was in flux, but you guys did it. And there was a sign there that said, this car is what I don't even remember the wording. It's only been 3 years, Megan. It's only been 3 years. Well, whatever the wording is that you have to give the Park Service, Megan, what is it? So I don't sound ignorant. You have to give the Park Service their just due.
Yeah, this project was funded.
There you go. I actually wrote it. But so I don't know why I forgot it that fast. But yes, so the wording was there. So I'm very thankful just for this program and this division. When I first started working with the team, there were only like 5 or 6 programs, and just to see how Congress just keeps throwing money at you is amazing. It's an amazing growth, and it just shows you what the nation needs. So you guys have to apply, because the more you apply, that shows Congress that these grants are needed. And even if you don't get it, if you don't get the grant, you can always ask why you didn't receive it. Always ask for those comments, because those comments will help you to be able to put together a better grant application. And sometimes, these grants come to us, these grant application deadlines come to us, and we're just like, get it out. That's fine as far as I'm concerned, because at least you still have, you'll still be able to ask for comments. And, it may just be that it wasn't, some of those buzzwords weren't in there. You have to say historic preservation when you're applying for a historic preservation grant. Sometimes something that a lot of times they'll see is if you were applying for one grant, let's say Save America's Treasures, you applied for Save America's Treasures and you didn't get it, but your grant application kind of still works for the African American Civil Rights Grant, and then you submit it, but all of your Save America's Treasures language is in there to say, I am applying for the Save America's Treasures grant. That gets kicked out because it's a conflict. It doesn't make sense. And the reviewers, it makes sense, but the reviewers are literally trying to figure out if you applied for the wrong program.
That's true.
Phoebe, your hand is up.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Phoebe Ferguson. I'm the executive director of the Plessy Ann Ferguson Foundation in New Orleans. And I want to say, first of all, we're so thrilled about the Leona Tate building, because we started our foundation in 2009, about the same time she did. And our second historical marker was put up in front of the school that is now renovated to the Tate Center. And we helped her fight to keep the school board. The school board had no idea of the history of that building. We had to educate the school board about this incredibly historic building. And anyway, we're excited. We have a different problem. Our foundation is about teaching the history of the Plessy v. Ferguson case and educating people about how it started in New Orleans and all of the people that pushed that case to the Supreme Court, which was not Homer Plessy. He just risked his life to do it, but everybody, So one thing that I'm wondering, we put up these historic markers and whatnot, but there isn't a building to preserve. However, one thing I'm wondering, I know that the Park Service often has a visitor center from which people could then go out to multiple sites. So we're trying to create a trail for the Citizens Committee who developed the strategy and brought the case. But we have no place to start on the tour that would be, and because there's no photograph of Homer Plessy, we're working sometimes with a difficult palette. And I'm just trying to figure out, we can always do a history project grant. because we have many of those. But I just wondered about this question on buildings.
That would probably not be one we could solve with a grant, but there's the jazz site in New Orleans as well as John Lafitte. So maybe there's some contacts through the regional office or those sites. I mean, you probably know the folks at those sites, right?
Yeah.
That maybe there's an opportunity there. I mean, especially John Lafitte, that
Right.
shares a lot of information about, I haven't actually, when I was there last month, it was closed, but maybe there's some partnership opportunity there. Okay.
And
Help
the-
with.
The superintendent of Jean Lafitte is a member. So Phoebe, if you
Oh, good.
email us at info@Black Museums, we'll connect you.
Okay, thank you.
And Phoebe, I was just thinking when you were talking, like certainly some kind of maybe digital trail. I know like we've got a GIS person on our staff working on story maps. We did a real successful story map project. It's actually multiple grants with the District of Columbia for the tracking of the segregation with the covenants, and it kind of mapped out those changes and things. But so anyone can go on the tour, from anywhere. They don't even have to just be in town.
Right.
But maybe there's some way to do that.
Well, we're working on that, with the UNO students to create the digital map for the citizens committees members. But
That's something you need money for, it sounds like.
yeah, so story maps falls under what?
It would be a history
History project.
grant. Yeah, history
That would
project.
be
You're tying
that
it to
would be-
place, you're showing where it's happening and
Mhm.
yeah.
Okay, thank you so much.
Megan, what grant programs would be more geared towards like digital humanities, like AR, VR, story mapping? That are we looking more at like a history grant altogether?
It probably need to be on the history side, like not so much a preservation project, but we have now so many that can fund that. I think it's more of making a link to, is it African American or would it be, tribal or something like that. But yeah, that's something we've done a lot of too. We've done several projects like that with, I believe it's the statewide for New York on LGBTQ history.
Yeah.
So maybe looking at those, we're actually about to finish our own story map, I believe, on underrepresented communities so that you can see that, so you can see what other people are doing. So hopefully that'll be, and again, if you sign up for the bulletin, you get to hear about all these things we're trying to.
I'm so excited to hear that all this story map stuff is happening with the grants that used to be mine.
Exactly. We'll have our own map just for Vedette's projects.
Yes, please. I think that would be beautiful. We do sometimes receive questions, and again, I can answer, but I'm going to yield the floor to you. We do receive questions from folks who are like, I want to do something with underrepresented communities, but I am a nonprofit. Who do they need to partner with? Just for us to kind of circle back with that. Who are their partners? Who should they be looking to partner with to make those things happen so that they can do nominations or a survey?
So for underrepresented communities, you need to partner with the state or tribal historic preservation office or your certified local government if you're located in one of those. And usually the states are pretty accommodating. They may even expand it to a larger type of situation, but do keep in mind that everything underrepresented communities can do, African American Civil Rights History Project can also do, and that a nonprofit could apply for directly. So you could do a survey, you could do a nomination there as well. Yeah.
If I were you all, when the African American Civil Rights grants reopen, please start applying. Something that you can do really easily is go to grants.gov, pull down the NOFO, or go to the Park Services website for SteelPeg and pull down the previous NOFO, and you can start writing your grant now so that you can have questions create it now so that by the time the new funding is released, you can already have a very solid application and just hit submit. Also make sure that your DUNS number is up to date and make sure that everything is where it needs to be in that SAM system, because you will get to start going in there and want to apply, and then grants.gov will say, nana, nana, boo, boo, you don't qualify because your stuff isn't up to date. So we don't want you to get to the very end of your application process and not be able to hit submit. Megan, if let's say, for instance, a SHPO, since it's just us on the call, let's say a SHPO is difficult for you to work with, who should that be a CLG, or should you just say, let me work with the African American Civil Rights Grants, because then I am a nonprofit and I can just move forward, and I don't have to worry about maybe some of the nuances of the SHPO's office.
It's probably always easier if you're a nonprofit to apply yourself, right? It's where you might need that partnership. But yes, not everyone, not everyone gets along, but it might be an idea, maybe you want to do a survey of your county or something. We've had states come in for a survey of the entire state, or a survey of a section or a highway or something. So it might be something that they're like, oh, that's a great idea, let's expand it, kind of thing. But we're also happy to talk that question through with y'all as well. Like, what do we think the best fit would be? And I think I saw Catherine's picture earlier, but I won't introduce Catherine Carey on our staff, and that's part of Catherine's role for us. Catherine, did you want to add anything? I know you always have some words of wisdom here.
Well, I don't have to have too many words, because between you and Vidette, y'all have it covered. And I love that. I don't even have to be preachy about planning or any of it. It's fantastic.
Happy to help.
No, the only thing I would add is that there are a lot of resources, and I am happy to share them with you. We have some new checklists and things like that really, I think, will help you walk through the grant application process a little easier. I know some of you are probably like one person shows, but the other thing I always like to say is, we all kind of have things that we're really good at. And often we're good writers, or we're good numbers people. Some people are lucky and they can do it all. But I always like to say, if you have somebody else you can partner with or team up with to help you with the grant, and they have a real specialty, bring them into it. It's only, yes, it may be a little more difficult, but it is only gonna help your grant be stronger, recognize, the I's that didn't get dotted, or the misspelled words, the things that we don't like to see when grants come in. So definitely use the people around you to build stronger grants, and do reach out to me. Somebody already did in the chat, Peter in Maryland already was like, give me your email address. And so please do the same thing, and get the bulletin, and you'll know when things open up. Megan, I don't know if you mentioned, but we're hoping to have a little bigger window, more than 60 days. We're going to aim for 90 days for that open window. That doesn't mean drag your feet now. That just means you can perfect everything and be sure you get it in time.
Thank you so much for that, Catherine. We are at time, but if anybody has a last question.
Yes, I have a question. I'm sorry. I have my hand up there. Let me lower it down. Phil Armstrong here in Tulsa, Oklahoma, Greenwood Rising, Black Wall Street History Center. We've got a couple of, if you haven't noticed, there's a couple of exciting things going on in Oklahoma. But my question is this, there are projects on this side of the state that there's a grant that we are really excited about applying for, the Human Equal Rights Grant for a project here. I'm sure Oklahoma City, my counterparts know them quite well, for the Clara Looper Civil Rights Center they're going to be building in Oklahoma City over 2024. I know they're going to be applying. Question is this, will the grants be limited? If there's two major projects, one somebody's asking for a couple million, somebody here's a couple million, will be like, well, we already gave this to Oklahoma, we're going to spread the wealth, as they say, or will multiple organizations in the same state be able to access these funds?
It's a really good question. We're not supposed to do that. So I don't think, I do tend to recommend, if you are an organization and you want to apply for more than one grant, to just realize you're competing against yourself at that point.
Yeah,
But
separate organizations, but
within the same state, no, it's gonna, yes, we'd love to see geographic diversity, especially in our civil rights program. But to me, Oklahoma, that's pretty good diversity. We actually have multiple, I think, well, at least one grant with Greenwood and in Tulsa for working on the buildings there. And we're super excited.
Braun and AAME church project.
Yeah, we've done some of that. So, and I will say as a aside that I keep my horses in Oklahoma. And
I was about to say, Megan has an affinity for Oklahoma. So not saying that you're going to get the grant, but some of her children are in Oklahoma.
Well, I do come.
I think they'll be applying for the civil rights. I think they'll be applying for the civil rights grant, the first one, and we have a project I think that will qualify for the human rights. So that
I do come out to Tulsa for a horse show every year in August. So if there's a site visit or something I can help with, I'm happy to do that. So
that'd be excellent. Thank you.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Well, guys, we're over time. If you have any questions, please feel free to email Megan and team, or you can email us at info@blackmuseums.org, and we will make sure to get them over to the Steel Peg team. I'm so thankful for each and every one of you for being here with us and having so great dialogue today. This is my AAAM group. Sometimes you guys sit back and you don't talk at all. You embarrass me. Not speaking, not putting anything in the chat, but you showed up and showed out today. Remember, we have conference coming up. The early bird is ending May 18th, and I cannot do anything about it. The system is going to shut you out on May 18th and pop up the price. So please make sure that you register early. I hope to see you in Miami, but if not, we will do the virtual conference the very next week. And I will be tired, not tired of you as members, but just tired afterwards. So please give the staff some breathing room after August. We might not see you guys until January. I don't know. We're going to have to work it out with the board. But I love each and every one of you. Megan and Catherine, thank you for being here with us and having such amazing dialogue. If the Congress tells you that they're going to give you $1 million for something last minute, just let me know. We'll push it out to the members. We share every single, share every single thing that you guys share with us, with members from every single federal agency. Although I have an affinity for you and have this amazing relationship with you, I know my members are like, she's going to share something else from Steel Peg. I know what's coming from Park Service, but it's just amazing. It's an amazing, you guys have amazing grant programs, and we just cannot leave money on the table. So
yeah, and if y'all have, like, this is great to speak to all of you. It's probably a group we haven't spoken to as much. If you know of other organizations, Catherine has me, she calls them the dog and pony shows that I get to do these presentations. But if you know of another group you're involved in, or that we could do this kind of similar virtual presentation to, we are more than happy to do that and work on our outreach there.
Absolutely. So I think you just opened the floodgates for everybody to contact you.
Let's see how happy Catherine is.
on this. Yes, thank you for your service, Catherine. But goodbye, everyone. Have a wonderful weekend. Try to be easy. Be safe. COVID is still real. You know, I don't go outside my 15-mile bubble. So COVID is real, y'all. I love you. I'll talk to you later. Bye.
Thank y'all.